Good evening to you. It is Saturday, November 12th at 9:52 p.m. Your Purdue Boilermakers have earlier in the day. It's been a while. Sorry for the late wrap up, but Purdue was able to beat Illinois in Champaign this afternoon and stay alive in the race for the Big Ten West. Somehow they're still scratching and clawing. A couple things have to happen that are out of their control, but they did a big thing today in beating Illinois, who was atop the division all by themselves as they came into their senior day, 7-2, ranked 21st, and Illinois fans did not show up in force at all. Pretty bad effort by them. If I'm going to nitpick, I tweeted about that, but I thought that was a little shocking. I'll talk about it a little bit more here, but before I do it, let me thank Martin Vintage. Head over to martinvintage.com. Martin Vintage has been with us for a while. If you want a Purdue t-shirt, classic looks, classic graphics, really nice feel, soft t-shirt, a sweatshirt, put something in your virtual cart, enter Boiled at checkout, get 15% off. And when you're heading back to campus next week when Purdue plays Northwestern, don't forget about our pals at AJ's. And before you go over there, you can order ahead if you don't want to wait in the line. EatAJ's.com. And you can get something delicious. You're going to grab a pint, grab some beef, grab a burger, watch a game. Doesn't get much better than that right there. EatAJ's.com. AJ's on Vine. So let me look at I really don't need to look at the stats a whole bunch, but here's what I can say. There were some heroics today that kept Purdue alive, and that was a big deal. Jeff Brom made a huge play call late in the game that sealed the game. It was Purdue could have tried to go for the field goal. They could have. It seemed like going the field for the field goal was the wisest choice, but instead he called a pass underneath in kind of the soft spot of the zone. Looked to me like Illinois was not playing man to man, which is a rare exception. They played a lot of man today versus Purdue. And T.J. Sheffield, Aiden O'Connell made a great pass. T.J. Sheffield made the catch. And that was pretty much the thing that decided the game. That was the biggest play, my most memorable play. But along the way, you had a lot of things happen that were really, really good. One of the biggest things that happened was Payne Durham played huge. I'll look at his stats here in a second. But before I dig into the stats, I just want to he just played. When Purdue needed a big play, it was Payne Durham there. It was him or Devin Mockabee, a theme that we've heard a lot with Mockabee specifically. Durham, though, has had disappearing games. He had games where he's been taken away completely from Purdue's offense, and today was not one of those. And I think part of that came down to Illinois, again, trying to play man on him. A lot of times they had guys on him. They were draped all over him, and he still was able to make the catch. I think the thing that O'Connell looks like he struggles mightily is when Payne is trying to find the soft spot in the zone, and he looks like he's covered up by a linebacker or bracketed on front side and back side. He seems to miss that linebacker a lot of the time. But, yeah, Payne Durham played huge, made a bunch of catches, had 2 touchdowns, a lot of catches in traffic, had one of the most noteworthy catches of the day. His 2 touchdowns were pretty burly. One was in the corner of the end zone. He kind of pointed up. Aiden O'Connell threw it up in heavy, heavy traffic. Durham went up and got it, got his foot down, and right after, Sheffield got a stupid flag. I went back, I just watched the video of it, and I was trying to figure out why did Sheffield get the flag. I didn't know what he had done. There was jawing all day. If you didn't watch the game, you might want to go back and see it. It was a hotly contested game from both teams. They were after each other verbally. There was a little bit of pushing and shoving. At halftime, a fight nearly broke out, which is a ton of fun, and I'm serious about that. Football and rivalries should burn a little bit hotter. I don't think of Illinois as a huge rivalry, although it's a trophy game. Purdue came home with a tiny little cannon as their reward, but I love seeing games where there's emotion. The hard thing that this Purdue team, and Jeff Brom specifically, has had is tiptoeing that line between emotion and control, and Purdue tends to flow over and out of control really, really quickly. It killed them at Syracuse. I mean, that was abysmal, right? You had tons of problems. You had seniors doing it. Today, T.J. Sheffield, he's a veteran. He's been around a lot. And he goes up to the guy. He wasn't even involved in the play, and he kind of made this motion on top of his head. I don't know exactly what he said to the guy. It was enough that the ref thought it was noteworthy because Sheffield kind of got in the guy's face and he got back in Sheffield's face. But Sheffield's a veteran. He did it. Another big play. Graham had I think two unsportsmanlike penalties on the same point after touchdown. I think he kind of got sick of somebody on the field not getting called for something, and so he went over, and I think he took umbrage directly with the official, and that's why he got the two flags. I'm not sure. Maybe one of you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. But the whole point about that, remember in Syracuse, it was Payne Durham who got the costly flag. Today you had both Graham and Sheffield, two veterans, get flags, and that stuff matters. There was another. If we're gonna go, I can go through player by player before I hit the stats. But of course, Charlie Jones had a great catch for a touchdown. It was a dangerous looking pass when it went out of Aiden O'Connell's hands down the right sideline. It was a skinny cross route on the right side, and Aiden O'Connell put just out of reach of the Illinois defensive backs. Hands went right between his fingers. It looked like, but Jones makes the catch. Purdue gets the touchdown. All's fine, but it looked dangerous when it happened. I think O'Connell had 3 touchdowns and an interception. Again, the interception was early. I'm going to double check it. 3 touchdowns, interception. He finished with just 237 yards. I think he completed about 63% of his passes, and made some poor reads. I think he would admit that. But really, the good thing is it kind of got out of his system early, and then Purdue just was able to methodically play the game they wanted to versus Illinois at times in the second half. They really did a good job at marching down the field, putting together good drives. One of the best drives you got to put some attention on Devin Mockabee again. He finished with 28 carries, 106 yards, and a touchdown. But on one drive, he had 46 yards rushing and a touchdown on just one. That's noteworthy. That's a big deal. Also noteworthy is Purdue was doing a kind of an interesting, it looked like option read at times to try to create space, create a running game. And most of the time it was getting pitched out to Mockabee. But one of those times, O'Connell kind of rolls right. The defense completely takes away Mockabee. I think an end and a linebacker went with Mockabee. And O'Connell looks out there, and he looks up the field. There's nothing there. He just decides to keep it. I think he had a 33-yard run on that scamper, if you want to call it a scamper, if you're going to be that liberal with your wording. But he gets up the field, and he looks around. You can tell after it breaks out about 7-8 yards, he looks around. There's nobody near him. He's like, okay. So he just keeps going, and then he has the most awkward, horrible sit-down slide to end the run. But it was funny. Pretty great play. And it was an important one. It seems like Purdue, when they needed to make a play offensively, they did today. That's pretty refreshing because they haven't done that for the last 2 weeks. And we got to see a little bit of a microcosm of what Jeff Brom teams do every year, right? Every stinking year, it feels like there's a losing streak at some point. I don't know if last year felt like this, but a typical Jeff Brom team is more like this, where you have a streak at some point where there are multiple losses in a row, and it feels like there's no way they can get out of this death spin, right? And then they find a way to do it. Today they find a way to do it versus Illinois, one of the best defenses in the Big Ten. Sure, Illinois' stats as a defensive team were a bit inflated because early in the season they played poor competition, and some of specifically their passing defense looked better, but they take a lot of risks. And I can't remember the guy, Witherspoon. The guy made me nuts watching him today as he flexed on Purdue players all day long. Sure, they didn't flag him for flexing towards the Purdue receivers over and over again, but they made some of these. The Big Ten officiating, the lack of consistency has always made me nuts. But with Witherspoon specifically, it was pretty annoying to watch this guy work. He thinks he's the second coming to Deion Sanders, clearly. I mean, back in his prime. And he's not. I can tell you he's not, because he got beaten a couple times that Sanders wouldn't have got beaten. And if he were the best corner in the league, I think we know the best corner in the league plays for Penn State, in my opinion. But anyway, Illinois had a couple guys that were jawing all day. There was another specific play, and this game was hot. There were guys getting after each other. Mockabee had a run, and he was gang tackled, pushed out of bounds, got past the width of the out of bounds, which is, I think, 1 yard, so it's 3 feet. and he got slung backwards. The ref comes in, and it looks like he's trying to stop it from getting bad because he was slung towards the Purdue bench, and Illinois players were there. Instead of flagging Purdue, he just comes in and kind of warns, and it felt like this powder keg was being created. And sure enough, it kind of rolled over, and there was conflict for much of the game. And the Big Ten refs got to get their heads out of their asses and call the game when it happens. That was a play specifically that they set a precedent that they were going to call something on Illinois. I don't know why they would call it the other way on Purdue if they jawed, but they weren't going to call it on Illinois, and that created a lot of problems. And this happens all the time, basketball and football. If the refs don't put their damn foot down, stuff like this happens. So it was a contentious game. The officials, if you go on Twitter, I always think it's funny, both teams are angry at the officials at the end of the game. I guess they did their job if both teams are angry, but they sure as heck didn't call a good game because they missed a lot. Sanusi King led everybody in tackles. O.C. Brothers had, he had 4 tackles. Kane had 8. Jalen Graham had 6. He's back to his high production, which is great. Lawrence Johnson had a key pressure at the end of the game, and that kind of sealed the game. There were a couple injuries. It looks like some guys may be injured so badly they're not coming back. But interestingly enough, at one point, it looked like sorry, I'm trying to find him. It looked like Branson Dean was hurt badly and he wouldn't come back. He got taken off the field with 2 coaches helping him. And instead, he came back in later and kind of put it together, and pretty impressive way to tough it out. Corday Sidnor continues to grow up before our eyes. He's looking great. He's an absolute behemoth man, and he played a huge game. Nick Caraway had 3 tackles, played really well, and Trice, I think, played a better game today than he had the past few weeks. So anyway, Purdue wins 31-24. Purdue improves to 6-4. Purdue becomes bowl eligible. At the same time, if you care about stuff like this, IU was officially ruled out of a bowl after their pretty good start. I think they started 3-0 or something like that, or 3-1. Regardless, if you care about Sundays or Saturdays like that, that's a big deal. And Purdue will play Northwestern next week on Senior Day. They'll get to host Northwestern. Similar situation with Illinois, that they'll have a lot to play for. And we got to be fans of Minnesota, as if Minnesota beats a couple teams here down the stretch, then Purdue can go to Indianapolis to play Ohio State or Michigan. So that's a big deal. But like I said, Purdue improves 6-4. Great Saturday. A lot of fun. Got a couple people on here live. My pal Handel Jones is on here. He says, ski you ma next week, I guess. Absolutely. Got to become Minnesota fans for a little bit. That's good. Also, would it be amazingly ironic if we have to rely on Nebraska on Black Friday for a chance to for the Indy trip? Yeah, I mean, this is the problem with not handling your business, right? I mean, Purdue's got to rely on other teams to help them get the job done. The way I look at it, though, just win games. If you win out, I said this a couple weeks ago, an 8-win season in the history of Purdue is a pretty special year. I think, I know I said I thought they'd win 9. Winning 8, though, is a pretty big deal. And they still have a chance to win 8 games and go to a bowl and possibly win a 9th. That hadn't happened a ton of times in my life, period. And I'm 47 years old. Happened last year, but it hasn't happened a ton of times. And so that's something to enjoy and something as fans to hang our hats on a little bit. And a lot of missed opportunities this year, but still a chance to win 8 games is great. And Purdue has 2 games that they should be able to at least be able to do some things they want to do versus Northwestern and IU. If you haven't watched Northwestern a lot, they play a very odd, high-paced offense. So they're trying to get a lot of plays off. It can backfire on them pretty quickly. And if Purdue can simply do what they're supposed to do, execute well, Purdue could do some damage on Senior Day. And then you've got IU, who is struggling to find offensive identity because I think they're on their 4th quarterback this season. And they've lost their best wide receiver, but they're going to be motivated. So no game's a gimme. I'm not saying that, but at the same time, I'm saying you're playing teams that this is the schedule you want at this point. So T-Rex says, man, how can they play like this against that team and against that defense and play so poorly against Iowa? I don't know. It's a mystery. This is that Jeff Brom thing. I don't know. And I think the games like this, like I always say, one of my favorite things as a fan is to have a pleasant surprise, right? Come into a game and you'll be like, I don't know about today, and then you'll leave the game feeling pretty high about it, and today's one of those. I did not feel good about today's game, and yet Purdue comes away from the victory with a victory. I kind of built up Illinois into something they clearly weren't. Yeah, they're not the team that I thought they were, but they're fine. And Bert's done a good job, and man, enjoy Bert. My gosh, his health can't be good. My gosh, he's a big dude. Let's see. Ted Berkey says Iowa was more motivated as they had their backs against the wall, and they didn't. They don't like Purdue for tampering with Jones and Tracy, and yeah, he used the word tampering in quotes, and I think it's fair to say that in quotes. I don't. I think in that case, right, Tracy was coming to Purdue, from the way I understand it, and he reached out. Tracy reached out to Jones and said, "Hey, you got to come here too with me." But Tracy had pretty good connection to Purdue because from Indiana. I think Jones is from Illinois, as we've seen over and over and over on TV. Jones and O'Connell played Little League ball together. But yeah, whatever. But you're correct. Iowa was very, very motivated. I said this from the beginning. I feared that team, and they played their best game. Wisconsin is just kryptonite. So what else you can do? Broxton Davis says he's a veteran, but it appears that Payne learned from weeks 1 to 3 with the jawing, I think is what I mean. Jawing, when things got chippy, he kept his composure. That wasn't the case against Syracuse, especially. And it wasn't the case against Syracuse. But, man, I tell you what, and you guys, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you remember my opinion on that was something that I was let down with the fact that Payne gets that flag period because if you look at the stuff they allow to happen in college football between plays, everything from guys locking up face masks, yelling at each other to taunting, Payne gets called and the other guy is driving his face mask into Payne's, and Payne gets the flag. I still, to this day, he should have had his composure, there's no doubt, as a senior, but man, that one frustrated the hell out of me. It still does, weeks later. And that Syracuse loss, guys, girls, that Syracuse loss looks especially bad. They are getting pounded right now as I speak. It's 10 o'clock on Saturday night. Syracuse looks really awful, and that looks to be Purdue's worst loss of the season. They gave that one away. Who knows what happens with the geometry of the season, right? The house of cards that is a football season when one game goes down and goes the other way. So if Purdue beats Syracuse, who knows what else happens? But that was a game they didn't have business losing. They had it in their hands. So Ted Berkey says back-to-back 8-win regular seasons is special, and it would be special, and that would be a very big deal, and that's something to really cheer for. If you've got tickets next week, definitely. If it's cold, if it's rainy, who gives a damn? Go to the stadium and give the seniors hats off. Aiden O'Connell deserves it. Payne Durham deserve it. I think Branson Dean is in that group. There's a ton of guys. And there's guys that I don't even know what their classification is right now that you probably won't see them again because they're either heading for the pros or whatever. Come support them. If you're like me, you love these players and what they represent, and as they grow old after they're seniors, after they play and they come back and they still have the goodwill, it's all part of the equation for me. I love the fact that, and it's probably starry-eyed optimism or gold-colored glasses, but I still view these guys as people that went through a similar experience to me going to Purdue on campus. So I know their experience is a little different than me as a 5'4" guy who never played sports there. Patrick Pence says, what was the conflicting signal against Purdue about? Okay, so that play it looked like the refs were going to call intentional grounding on Danny DeVito's son. He's not Danny DeVito's son. On DeVito. Okay, he threw the ball away after, scrambling way backwards. And come back, and I said, the refs are discussing something, and I said to my family, if there can be a way for this to backfire on Purdue, it's going to. Because we've seen it over and over and over. And sure enough, they come out of that, which looks like they're going to see either intentional grounding or it's not going to be grounding. Instead, they come back and they say delay of game on Purdue. And the reason they called it was the shift that Sidnor made before the snap, they said was not a football. There's a rule that talks about before the snap, you can't do anything that's not a football move. Purdue had been running a shift, a four-man shift all game. Sidnor shifted hard to his left when he was right near the center. I don't think he was right over the center. And it caused some guys to move or it caused some distraction. And that's why the snap went over DeVito's head or shoulder, because He jumped it. By the way, earlier in the game, Purdue did something that every team does. Again, that shift, when a four-team shifts, you can shift sideways. That's within the rules. I've seen this for decades. I mean, I think it was the Dallas Cowboys used to do it back in the late 70s, early 80s. They became famous for this. But when you see that movement as an offensive lineman, sometimes guys will say, oh, they're coming forward. They're not coming forward. They're coming sideways. So the ref, I think, made a bad call. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but that was the call they made on Sidnor. I believe it was Sidnor. And so they called delay of game on Purdue because it's something like distracting the center, or it's almost like the idea of clapping or yelling or doing things that cause the count and the call by the quarterback to be distractible, and that's a call, and I think it was the wrong call. Ted Berkey says, I think we messed with the snap count somehow. So that's it. It wasn't they messed with the snap count. It was the movement. John Younger says, Jalen Graham deserves it. I don't know. I must have been saying something when he said that. I don't know what he's talking about. So I apologize. Sorry, John. Appreciate you tuning in. Broxton Davis, his the final question or comment. You have any thoughts on Brahms' play calling today? Sure. It's like it's been in most of the wins this season, where there have been these long deserts of play calling where you're like, are they looking to just get off the field? Like, completely uninventive, completely vanilla. The trick plays that we all love, the gadget plays, whatever you want to call it, they're nowhere to be found. But I think a lot of the roots of Purdue's problems as an offense come down to not enough wide receivers getting involved, not enough diversity in Purdue being able to spread the ball around, and Aiden O'Connell rushing when the pocket collapses. He did a much better job today of waiting to make his throws and his reads and not panic. The offensive line has been doing a great job, I think, generally keeping that pocket clean. And secondly, probably more importantly, busting up holes for Maccabee to run through. And Maccabee runs with such abandon. He hits the hole so darn quickly that it changes the game a lot. And I would say one thing that Purdue did, the unusual motion, like throwing the option in there, it seemed like a weird move because O'Connell's not much of a threat to run, but it worked. So at times I'd say the play calling looked good or solid. At other times I was like, man, why does this happen where the play calling gets so boring and vanilla? And maybe I'm being overly critical. The big thing is at that end of the game when they really need to make plays and the play calling need to be big, specifically going for it on fourth down. There was a gutsy call. And part of the reason he made that call, though, I think, is because Finneran had missed a field goal earlier from, I think it was outside 40. He had made a 25-yarder, but there's not a lot of confidence in the kicker right now. I think Finneran would say, I don't have a lot of confidence. He's not playing with the confidence he did this time last year, and he kind of needs to he absolutely needs to get that back. But Brom made that play call. That was a gutsy call, and Sheffield did exactly what he needed to do. So John Younger says, coming to the game next weekend, you reference seniors. Yes, Jalen Graham does deserve our support. I apologize for being brain dead there. Jalen Graham deserves our support. I think he's in his fourth year. I think he could, if he wanted to, stay around as a COVID year, I believe. This stuff's so screwy to me. Who's eligible, who's not for an extra year. I think regardless, Jalen Graham, I was surprised he came back last year. I think Jalen Graham is a pro football player. He's physically ready to go. He's a great player, and I have loved seeing him as a Purdue player, as a safety and as a linebacker. And he's one of those guys who deserves a tip of our cap again. So come to Purdue. If you don't have tickets yet, go get them. I think there's a couple thousand still left. So call the ticket office and grab a ticket or ask around, see if you can get one, because I don't want Purdue to look. I don't want Ross-Ade to look like Illinois did today on TV. Honestly, I thought that was embarrassing again. So thanks again for tuning in. I'm at 24 minutes, so I'm gonna call it a day. Really appreciate you tuning in live. Really appreciate you listening on tape. And Purdue is still alive. That's a darn good thing. So have a great evening. God bless you. Hammer down. We'll see you.